right, well, welcome everybody who's already chiming in here. This is Justin Cook on your screen.
Nice to meet you.
Jay Cooker, Mr. Cook, J Dog, and also known as Wilderness, Wayback Wilderness. If you find him on Instagram, it's Wayback Wilderness. His website is also waybackwilderness.net. Among many things, Justin is a flint napper. Not only is he a great flint napper, you can see some of in the background. He has some of his museum pieces. He can nap anything and make it look really good. Not only does it look cool, but he's also an expert at doing reproductions. So he's got the skill set to be able to take it all the way up into a museum quality. But what's really cool about Justin is he's a really good instructor. So by the end of this, you're gonna be able to make all those.
Yeah.
The great thing about what?
I'll do my best.
Okay, class 2 is where you're going to make all those. So
Right.
The really cool thing about way Justin teaches is that it's very, very approachable. And that's oftentimes with something like this that you can get overwhelmed with. It's great to have somebody who says, look, you don't have to have a lot. You don't have to make a big investment. It's a really simple skill. You can start off going to your hardware store, maybe even not, really, with the basic tools and basic knowledge, and you can always get better. So Justin's a great flint napper, great instructor, does a lot of other things too. Follow him for all kinds of other way back knowledge. I think he's famous for saying, we never really create anything new. We're just always, never invent anything new. We're just always kind of reinventing what's already out there. And flint napping and knife making and all these other things are no different. So I'll turn it back over to Justin. And thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Dustin. I appreciate it. So thanks for being here. So I'm a flint napper. I've been doing it for almost 20 years now. I started when I was about 18. So anyway, flint napping is really cool to start with. But what's really cool about flint napping is that if you go back in your lineage, no matter how far you want to go, you'll eventually come into, you had ancestors that used stone tools. So the Stone Age is something that we share as it's a human heritage. It's one of our first technologies, and it's arguably one of the first languages. If you encountered another individual that didn't speak your language hundreds of thousands of years ago, you could probably connect over your ability to work stone tools. So it's something that we share, and it's really cool just to keep it alive, because it's very humbling to know that, you know, a simple rock can provide you with some of your essential needs. You know, a knife. We all know how important a knife is. So this particular instruction, I wanted to talk about glass napping, because one of the things that we were talking about is this is a very advanced skill. I mean, to get to a level where you're, you know, making points like this, it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time. Stones are different. You got to learn each stone and how it works. And it can be very intimidating. But glass is so readily available. This is from a television screen right here. Just started like this right here. So when you start breaking it down like that, then your ability to access these materials and make tools to work glass, if you know what you're doing, then, you know, you can make a weapon pretty quickly from stuff that you're going to encounter no matter where you are in the world. Any beach, any waterway, you're going to find some glass. Garbage dump. So without further ado, let's talk about glass napping. So this is a glass tile. You can get these at Home Depot, any hardware store. And for starting out, practicing is really good. About that thickness right there. They're cheap. You can get a whole box of them. Yeah, you can use bottles, but bottles, you have to get the bottom out, and then you got to work the convexity out of the bottom of the bottle. So it's kind of tricky. You can get some flat-sided bottles, some liquor bottles, which are square, which are really good, but still you got to get those squares out. So this is good. It's cheap. It's everywhere. And tools. You know, tools are one of the limiting factors when it comes to flint napping. I'll go through some of the basics. A hammerstone is essential, and then a deer antler. I can make this right here using these tools entirely. Okay, but an antler, that can be a little intimidating as far as working that. This is just a steel nail that's driven into a stick, and I'm actually going to work this tile that I just showed you with a tool that I'm going to make right now. So, getting started. This is a simple steel nail. So I used a hacksaw, or you could use a pair of lineman's pliers, cut the head off, and I've ground it to that right there. And I hand ground that. It didn't take long at all, just with a grinding wheel. You'll need a grinding wheel or a tight grained stone like that, something. But so I've done that, and then I just went ahead and cut a stick. This is just a piece of crepe myrtle from the yard. And then I'm using the sharp end to go down. Okay, I have a flint knapping tool. So I'm going to use that in a second. To start with, I'm going to take this tile. I'm going to use a hammerstone. This is just a landscaping cobble. You can find them anywhere. And I'm going to start by creating a serpentine edge, which is a zigzaggy edge. So I'm holding it down at this angle, and I'm running this little corner off to begin with, like that. You see, I got that corner off, and now I can start working into this piece of glass. You don't have to overthink this much. First blood. Gloves are good. See how I'm holding this up and supporting it with the back side of my finger. All the way down. I'm bleeding good. It's not bad. Glass is just really sharp. And you get one of these tiny little splinters. Tiny little piece of glass right into your finger.
Hey, Justin.
Yes, sir.
Do you think you can move the camera up on your phone just slightly a few inches up, facing up higher so that it's cutting off your head on some, yeah. Can you move the camera up higher? That might.
How's that?
Yeah, because you'd have to move back further, and I don't want that to happen. So I think let's try that. And then somebody asked,
That work?
let's see if that'll work. I'll let you know. And then somebody was asking, no, you're not wearing any eye protection?
I probably should be wearing some eye protection, but I got to be able to see what I'm doing. So what I'm doing here is going around this entire edge and just chipping it off to where I've got a continuous platform. And I'm making sure that I support the piece. See how I got my finger spread across the piece, front to back, and I'm driving this into my hand. That's your hand works as a shock absorber. See how I'm moving my finger down the edge as I chip. Also notice the strike. I'm not hammering at it I'm not like driving a nail. I'm striking through. It's as if I'm trying to pitch this stone right into the edge. As you can see, in just a short amount of time, I can create a really strong working edge, really sharp edge. It doesn't take much time at all, and this is it's something that's so available to you. So, you know, if you're interested in learning flint knapping, especially in these quarantine days, it's a good activity. So I often get asked a lot of times, it's why do you want to spend so much time on obsolete technology? And I would have to argue that it's not obsolete once you accomplish some level of proficiency, because you know it is what it is. It wouldn't have it for something that worked so long to provide for us our cutting needs, if you will. You know, to say it's obsolete just because we use steel now, well, that's not correct. And just with a little bit of practice and a little bit of patience, you can get to a level where you can make a hunt-worthy implement, you know, or a cut-worthy tool on the fly with not much. Okay, so now I've got just a classic leaf-shaped blade. It'd be good for anything, but we're going to take it down, and I'm going to do that using an antler. So the next thing you need is something to protect your hand. Here I'm using an old boot, recycling an old boot, and then I'm going to use a deer antler. This is just a piece of antler that I've sawn off a rack. This is called pressure flaking. So I'm going to put the tip of the antler right on the edge, like right on the edge, like that right there. Let it bite into the antler and apply pressure until that glass breaks. Now this is how you shape it. This is how you sharpen it. This is how you notch it. All those things. So how do I generate enough force and power? Okay, so let's talk about grinding the edge. After every pass, it's going to be razor sharp. It's broken glass sharp. So you got to take something and dull that edge down a little bit. So you see how I'm doing that? Using the hammer stone, kind of crunching it. I'll just go ahead and go all the way around. I'm careful not to flick those, one into my eye and two into my thumb. So I'm holding at an angle that the flakes are actually going toward the camera. So what that's doing is grinding the edge and essentially profiling my platforms, which platforms are anywhere that the tool makes contact with the material. So I've done that, and see now I've got those edges are all like white and crusty and ground down. I can put more pressure on them now. So we'll find the low spots. The low spots are relative. This is a low spot. So now that's a high spot. So I'm just going to go and push anywhere below my center line and start taking a series of flakes off using this this piece of antler. So push, block pressure, and push. So what I was starting to talk about was how do you get enough force to do that? You use your thighs. You use your thighs and you fix both wrists on the inside of your femurs here, and then I get my radius in on the lock and my wrist locked like this, and then I will squeeze and push down. So I'm using my body, not my wrist, because you don't have a lot of strength in your wrist. So this is where the time-consuming part comes in. We can bust it out and get it done, which is what I intend to do, or we can really take a long time on this and make something that's very precision. And it totally depends on your needs and what your end goal is. If you're just trying to get something made quickly, then it really doesn't matter how it looks like. If you're wanting to put something under glass and get 1,000 Instagram likes, then you need to spend some more time on it. So that was that series of flakes that I just took. And see how I spaced them, skipping a good space between them. And that way, as the flakes travel, they'll spread out. And after every series of flakes, there's a new ridge line formed, like here. So I will go regrind, and that gives me essentially an on-ramp to get to the center of this piece. And see how the flakes are almost going to the center now? On this next pass, they will, because they've got that ridge, that energy to follow.
Hey, Justin, we got a question from Rob Williams about you're turning the piece. Is that so you're applying pressure from alternate sides?
Yes. So to answer your question, there's essentially 4 sections of this point. Imagine a line going this way, and then a line going, splitting it in half this way. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And every one of those sections are essentially a series of flakes, either percussion or pressure. So from here to the edge, my objective is to get a flake to go from the edge to the center. And then I'll hit it, and then I'll come over on this side and get it from the edge to the center, and they'll meet in the middle. And it's called collateral flaking. So I've done this side, now I will prep this side and work it back that way. And then notice how I'm setting the tool and then pushing until the flake releases. And see how I'm pushing in this part of my hand right here? I'm bleeding all over the place. It's what you get for handling broken glass. See how that flake went? There's it's all about technique. Controlled force.
And we got another question here I missed from Austin. He was asking about the stone you're using. That one's a landscape stone. But he said, what other stones would you be looking for? Is it the density, the shape, the size? What's the most important factor?
That's an excellent question. And it could take a long time to answer. But essentially what you're looking for is a really tight grained quartzite or sandstone. Oh man, I just dropped my point. It fell out of my lap. Well, I got 2 now. We're gonna make 2. So,
Awesome.
shit. It happens. Anyway, this is quartzite, and it's a really tight grained sandstone. So one of the rules that you can kind of go by is if you can drag it across your pants and it wants to grip the fabric, then it's probably a pretty good stone. It also doesn't need to be too dense or too hard. Like for example, a piece of quartz is way too hard because it essentially pings the stone, and it'll make cones in the stone, which are fractures that you don't want. And it's entirely no different than hitting it with this hammer right here. So it's got to have something that'll give up some energy, because what you're essentially wanting to do with a hammerstone is crush to fracture. And that's what those little microcrystalline pieces do in this hammerstone. They at initial contact, they essentially cut and etch the edge, but it has to be soft enough that the edge of that flake doesn't experience catastrophic impact and decompartmentalize when you hit it. So it's got to be able to carry the motion, the force. So if that makes sense, like the hammerstone, when you make contact, it has to be soft enough that it doesn't crush the flake, so it can push the flake. So if you ask, It's a long answer, but it takes some doing. Okay, so when I leaned over, I dropped that piece out of my lap and it fell and it hit this piece of glass, which I had right below it, and it broke. So it happens. As they say, now you got two. So I'll be rolling this one. And what I'm doing now is, see, that's where that broken edge was. So I'm going to turn that edge. So what I did there was I was striking from the tip down to try to reduce mass and get that profile right. So now I'm going to do that on this side. Okay, so all I was trying to do there was just get this to where I can get on it with a pressure flaker. That was the quick and dirty version. And where is that? Here it is. Okay, so the tool we just made, just this simple nail and a stick. Now to start with, I'm going to go ahead and say that copper or antler will get you much further than steel. But what I wanted to show you was just that you've got the tools to do this. You've got the resources laying around in your backyard. So now to work with a steel pressure flaker, it's kind of tricky because it wants to slide on the glass. So you're essentially letting the tool just push through the piece. So what that means is instead of pushing on the edge, I'm pushing above the edge. See, like this is the edge right here, and I really can't get much on that. It just wants to crush, but I can come right here on top of it and just push straight down. So your platforms are going to be a lot different. But it works. It works, and it's field expedient. It's something that you can. It's obtainable. So now all I'm looking to do, we're kind of salvaging it, and I'm just going to make a real nasty killing point here. See how I'm pushing up on top of it? Let's talk about shaping for a second. Once I've kind of got it into general shape like this, I can use my hammerstone just to come in here and just really rough shape it out. Since we're going to be removing more material, and it's a piece of glass, we've already got our profile. It pretty much comes out of the box in profile. And you see how I'm more brushing it than I am actually trying to take massive flakes. What I want to do is just catch the edge, and to go back to what I was talking about with the hammerstones, if it's got that grabby, really coarse, well, not really coarse, but that texture, it'll grab the edge and essentially just pull those flakes off. So again, flint knapping, it's all about your objective. If I needed just a cutting implement, then that little piece of glass right there will take care of all my cutting needs. It will, dress your animal, whatever. It's going to be a little hard to hang on to, but it's not going to be for lack of sharpness. And then if you're looking for something to tie on a stick and penetrate a chest cavity, then you're going to need to build a point. And the reason you got to do that is the flakes kind of crush on impact. That's why you can't just tie a flake onto a stick. That might work for you, but it probably won't. By building a point that's got a good cross section, which is like this, lenticular, like two lenses put together, it creates a ton of sectional density, which is essentially shrink through a section, and the section would be from the tip to the base. So by building that convexity into your material, you're creating something that can withstand forward force and penetrate, which is the whole objective of an arrowhead. Now, to make a knife or something that we're going to use to saw with, cut with, in a back and forth motion, then we want a nice, clean, straight edge, which I'm doing right now. Just going down the edge of that. Something that's relatively straight, and I'm going to chip it back the other way. Like that. And now see how that's created a pretty straight edge, a pretty continuous edge. You see how sharp it is. So because it's kind of chiseled shape now, it'll withstand use. Now, I mean, this is glass; it's going to break, but that gives you a straight edge. So when you're cutting it, you're not having a high spot here and a low spot here, making two cuts. So to use as a knife or something, that's what you want to do. And that's also satisfactory for a finished edge for a projectile point. So we'll just do that on the other side.
Justin, when you get a chance, do you think you can show a close-up that'll show that edge real cleanly?
Yeah. So kind of hard to see because it's glass, but you can see how it's got a nice straight edge going down there. Straight for a nail in 30 seconds anyway.
Do you think if you get it any closer, it'll still stay in focus? Will it show it any better? That's not bad.
We could try and get some finished pictures of it, a little higher resolution, and maybe put those on the blog after this.
That'd be good.
And Justin, we got another question from Tad. Is there anything to help with aim while using the hammerstone, or is it simply practice? He has issues with taking too large of flakes off with bad strikes.
So I'll show you a tip. We'll switch gears for a second, okay? So I'm just gonna put this down. We'll finish it in 1 second. So here's a stone. Let's talk about what we need the most if we were ever in a situation where we're relying on stone tools, which never happened, but it could. What you need the most is just a simple flake. Just a simple flake, just a one strike, take a flake off, and that's your cutting tool. That's plenty sharp to do what you want to do. What are you going to be doing first? Well, cutting cord, cutting plant material for cord, building a fire, cutting a fireboard. I mean, if we want to play that, I'm lost in the woods and all I have is a rock gang. But that's what you're going to need first before you need a bow, before you need an arrow, before you need an adder out. You got to get some basic materials first. String, fire, all that stuff. So to get that, to start with, you got to find a good piece of chert, and then the next step is taking off a large spall or a large flake that can be used. That's large enough, that's flat enough, that's got a essentially straight. Which I mean, now I know that's curved. I can see that, but what I mean by straight is that edge is not jagged. it comes together in the same width to thickness profile throughout. So as you're cutting, you can slice. Okay, so to remove a flake, and to answer your question, are there any tips to use with a hammerstone? I'm going to attempt to take this ridge off right here and create essentially a triangle shaped flake. We'll see if we can get it. But to coordinate that strike, what I want to do is push where I want to make contact. Hang on. Backside sharp and it's right in my hand. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping and I'm feeling it back here in the bottom of my hand to see if that energy is resonating in the right direction. And then I'm tapping and I'm also see where those little white marks are where the stone's making contact. So I'm creating a visual. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like for me where I'm sitting. And right in there on that top line somewhere is where I'm going to be making contact. And that should carry it at least 3/4 of the way. So I do that, and then I'm going to push into it. I'm going to fix my hand. I'm going to push into it as hard as I can, all right? And what I'm doing here is I'm creating a muscle memory artifact. So I'm doing that. So when I come back to my strike, I want to come back to the same way that felt. And unfortunately, I exploded my flake because I struck too hard. But, you know, that's essentially what I was going for, was running that ridge. I missed a little bit. But anyway, so why was I selecting that? Because if you can find a piece that's got a good ridge like that right there, you essentially have a ready-made half spool already beveled to the right angle cutting tool, you know? So anyway, do it again. I found a fracture in the stone. See? Happens. So I don't want to get too involved in this. I want to finish my last point. But so in just a few seconds, I've made a really good hand tool, which were used all over the world and called a hand axe. So this is essentially the Swiss Army knife of prehistory. Be pointed on one end. And so just pointed on one end, an edge down the other. One edge is generally ground to the back of your hand. So you can see just like that, you've got essentially a digging tool, a poking tool, a cutting tool, a chopping tool, and that's about as simple as it gets as far as flint knapping goes. Of course, that's learning how to use a hammerstone too. But anyway, we went through that. Let's back to this glass point. So
Now, if you're back to flaking, we got a question in regards to what other natural materials might you be able to find to use as a pressure flaker?
well, to answer your question, the best pressure flaker you're going to find is a deer antler. I mean, that's it just doesn't get much finer than that right there. Because
Do animal bones work as well?
bones can work. I don't recommend bone though, because the variability in the bone is so much. Bone tends to want to splinter real bad, so it will work, but it'll also splinter out on you. Bone's really brittle. Antler's soft, and the soft is good because the edge bites into the antler. You will get carpal tunnel doing this.
Any recommendations then how to avoid or live with carpal tunnel?
Shoot, I'm looking for some. Limit your time and make your wrist as stationary as possible. And if it hurts, then you need to change your technique, because it's rough.
You got any recommendations for people starting out, like no more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time, or where should they start?
When your hands start hurting, you need to stop. Listen to your body. And take plenty of time to recover if you do hurt yourself. Because this is the definition of occupational hazard, if you will. You're doing repeated motion, and it's just rough, you know.
Now, back in any sort of tribal times, would there be dedicated flint knappers in a tribe, or was it kind of a standard skill that everybody had?
I think that it'd be essentially the same as think of it like mechanical ability. The average person can change a tire, change their oil, you know, kind of do the basic things associated with a vehicle, but only a few of us are actually competent mechanics, you know what I mean? So I think the majority of people had the ability to maintain their tools, keep them sharp, take a series of flakes off here and there. I think almost everybody probably had that, but it's evidence, you know, that there's styles and workmanship of points that have been found in certain contexts with certain cultures that highly suggest that there was essentially lithic industry associated with flint knapping, and that you know, yes, there was specialization regarding flint knapping, but no, not everybody that was flint knapper was a specialized flint knapper either.
That makes sense. Being able to, I guess, field maintain your stuff a little bit would be a valuable skill, but you don't necessarily have to create the tool per se.
Exactly. You know, when you got a real problem, you go to the mechanic, or if you need a an exceptionally good knife or blade or something, then you go to the guy that makes them for a living. Okay, so I've chipped that. Let's jump back to our steel nail. So notching. Notching is just essentially taking a series of flakes at the same place to dive into the body of the point. So for that, I go like a 1, 2, 3, like one this way, one that way, one in the middle. And what I'm doing is I'm creating ridges. So this one creates a ridge, 2 series of ridges like that. This one creates 2 series of ridges like that, and they'll leave a ridge in the middle. So that can push that flake. And clear glass is one of the hardest things to notch because you can see through it. So sometimes you're looking at the edge and you're really looking through it at the other edge. It's kind of tricky. So there's one notch. Well, it's going to be a stem point now. Okay, so now we have a pretty decent arrowhead. Now let's do some wicked serrations. So serrations are basically, I'm just going to push through the edge with enough gap that it leaves a serration. And why do we want that? Well, that jagged edge is jagged broken glass. So it's extremely sharp. You really can't improve on it. Okay, so we are done. We have created a very efficient killing tool in no time from just a piece of glass. And I used a deer antler, a steel nail that's driven into a stick, and a hammer stone. It's the only 3 tools I use. Well, let me take that back. I did use this grinding wheel, but I can also grind on the hammer stone. So this just takes a lot of material off quickly. So that's pretty much the basics. You can do this, you can learn it, you can teach yourself. It is very much a trial and error skill. And then you can be making stuff like this, and you know, I'd say within 2 weeks of practice, you could be making this. Any questions?
So size-wise of that point you have there, is that more applicable for atlatl size, spear size, arrowhead?
This would be a very large arrowhead. Now, to make an arrowhead, we need just a really small piece, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't take much to make an arrowhead. I'm looking down here. So here's a flake. That's just a simple little flake. And to make an arrowhead, I can use just steel nail. in a very short amount of time. You know, put a point on it. I'm getting there.
All right, we got a couple more questions rolling in. If you can answer while you're chipping.
Yeah.
All right. How long did it take you napping before you started to produce quality points?
I initially started when I was about 18 years old, and by started I mean just started beating on rocks, becoming interested in flint and where to find it, and then I didn't get really proficient for 5 or 6 years after that. But what I did is I went to school at University of Alabama, so I was exposed to Moundville, and there's napping events that happen there. They're called nap-ins, and it's where flint nappers come from all over to essentially just nap for the weekend, make arrowheads, share knowledge, and a lot of us are real good friends because there's not many people that do this, or that do it on a vocational level. So it's fun, and I learned just by going to those, watching, getting some stone, taking it home, and doing exactly what I'm doing right now. So I would say, but to answer your question, probably took about 5 years of steady flint napping to get to where my stuff looks like good stuff. But just to make an arrowhead, like really all you got to do is find a flake and chip a triangle out of it. That's essentially all you need. Everything you need, nothing you don't. A simple little triangle, and then for arrows, just they really don't require a lot of lashing. You can almost just glue them in many cases. Of course, you need to reinforce the shaft, but a little pitch, little hide glue, wood glue, and you're good to go.
And that's more just because they're intended to be kind of single-use type things. You're not going to be target practicing with them and pulling them back out of hay bales and whatnot.
That's right. And there's just so little to wrap on that. Now you got to wrap behind the shaft, and I'm kind of getting into archery at this point. But if I were going to mount this and to say that, I want to wrap a good inch or two behind it so it doesn't want to split the shaft. But as far as actually setting it in there, it doesn't need a lot to ride and go. So.
Do you know anything about making flints for rifles?
Sure.
And I assume that's even more basic than arrowheads. You're just trying to get a flake in there.
It's no, to do that. Let's see here. I'll have to get up and get another stone. Okay, so to do like gun flints, you got to set up your rock to start with.
So what is it that you're trying to get set up here?
Well, I'm trying to get it to where I can drive some flat flakes off.
We got a question from some girl named Teal.
Yeah.
What's the most common technique error you've seen folks learning?
The most common technique error. It's a good question. Probably number one is wanting to treat the billet like a hammer. Like driving nails into wood is not how you do it. So instead, you want to essentially hit a home run when you swing a bat and you make connection with that ball, and it's just like crack. But the bat doesn't stop; it keeps going all the way around. Or a golf ball, if you will. You know, when you make connection with that ball, the club still goes. So it's the same thing with a billet. It's making contact on its way down. So you've got to have full travel.
So almost more of a glancing blow at that point.
Almost a glancing blow. So to try to pop out a gun flint real quick, like I took this flat flake off. I'm going to try to get one here, but if I don't, I'm gonna exploit that flatness right there. So I switched to an antler, which is a soft hammer, because I want a lot of force, but or excuse me, I want a lot of speed without a lot of weight. Well, if I can hit it. You got me in gunflint mode, man. What's up with that?
Just somebody asked.
All right. Here, I got this flat side. Let's see if I can get a
You
flat.
say you got a separate class for that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sucking at gun flints. Here we go. Okay. So
In regards, oh, you got one there?
A good flat flake like that. And then essentially what you want to do is, well, there it went. Just snapped it in half. And then you would trim that down to where it's got a good leading edge and make it square. And a little square gun flint. Right. That's all you're looking for. You're trying to drive a perfectly flat flake, something that'll fit in the jaws like that right there. And then you wrap this with a piece of lead sheeting, and then clamp it down in your jaws and make all the gun flints you need. Okay, so like while we're on the topic of gun flints, you got me on gun flints. So here's one that's good and flat, and you see this would clamp into the jaws, and you've got this good edge here. So what I want to do is create a stress point like halfway through it, and then see, I made a stress point exactly halfway through it, and then it'll break on that, and then I've got this, and see how that's angled just right. So now
turn into a robot.
see, now I've got that angle that you want for a gun flint, where it's got that nice rise like that, and then that'll fit right in the jaws. or flip it over like this, and that'll be the cutting edge that hits the frizzen.
All right, thanks. I don't know what happened with your phone. We're probably getting close to ending this anyway, but kind of started voice modulating, sound like a robot now.
Uh-oh.
It happens every once in a while.
A little better.
It's not hot.
We had a couple other questions here real quick. Lake smooth shale, would that work as a hammerstone or is that too soft?
Shale will come apart. Shale's got the way it's a sedimentary rock, so the way that it's stacked together, you start hitting it, it'll come apart. Shale does not make a good hammerstone.
And then does flake pattern matter for arrow points, or is it mostly just for show? As long as it has an edge, it's good to go.
Flake pattern can matter. Essentially, serrations are considered a flaking pattern. But if you've got something like an overshot flake, to where, like here's an overshot flake, where the flake went from one side to the other, all the way over. See how it rolls off and creates that ultra sharp edge, like right there? So flake pattern can matter in regards to like outro-passe flaking, which is overpass flaking, to where it comes off like this and gives you this real sharp leading edge. So yes, for like if you are able to control that overshot and get where you can have a continuous edge breaks like that, you essentially got a Stone Age box cutter at that point. So in that regard, it does matter. But in regard to like arrowheads, what matters the most is sectional density, something that's going to hold up, that's going to penetrate, that has a nice lenticular cross section, and then a really sharp edge. Like this has to be super fresh, super fine, because you've got to penetrate hair and hide and bone. So, that's what you're going for.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps up most of the questions I saw here. There are a couple more, hoping for more kind of detailed up close as to angles of how you're napping and kind of working the edge with tools, like what angles you're working at. But
so, like this right here, sit down, back up, good posture, both wrists right here on the inside of your thighs. Put a piece of leather right in the palm of your hand, like that right there, so you can come over it like this. Take whatever tool you're using, antler, copper. You want that one here in this hand, like here. And when you put your hands together, you're going to be right inside your knees, pushing in and forward. So into the point, or I'm sorry, down and forward, down and forward.
Because it's not at a 90-degree angle, right? You're not just
well, it's at all angles.
Okay.
A 90-degree angle, which would just be like this, would just chop an edge straight. A 90-degree angle is just for shaping. So, that's a 90-degree angle, just straight down. But you see how the flakes don't travel? That's as far as they go.
Okay.
They go straight down. So
I think that's what I did the first time I was trying to nap with you guys. I think that's what I was doing.
So if I come at a steeper angle, then that's more into the point. So this tool is actually going like from here to there, if you will, like this. And so you see how that flake traveled further. See how it went further? So
it's hard to see on these cameras, but yeah, I get what you're saying there.
See, it went to there.
Cool.
So the more in, the further your flake's going to go. The more down, the shorter the flake's going to go. You're
about an hour into this, so this is where we had planned to wrap it up originally. You got the floor now, whatever you want to do with it. If you want to get people over to your page, sign them up for classes, now's your time.
Sure. Well, I'm Wayback Wilderness on Instagram, on Facebook, and on the World Wide Web. So if you're interested in a one-on-one class, I offer 8 hours for $300. You can come to me, or I can come to you if you pay my travel. I also offer classes at Georgia Bushcraft pretty regularly. So as soon as the COVID thing gets out of the way, we're looking at getting some of those on the calendar. And, I'm also available if you just want to shoot me a message on Facebook, Instagram, through my website to answer questions. But anyway, thanks for having me. Thanks for watching me. And if you've got further interest, don't hesitate to ask.
Do you sell any of your points?
Everything's for sale. I don't maintain an inventory really, but if I post something and it's available and you're interested in it, then my prices are pretty reasonable. Generally, it's about $15 to $20 an inch finish. So your 4-inch point, you're looking at $50-$60, something like that. But if you want like hunting points or something like that, I can do that as well. And actually, on my website, I offer a hunting point options, $25 ship.
And the arrowhead that you made today, do you want to do anything with that one?
Oh yeah, we could do something. If somebody wants it.
Raffle or
A waffle.
waffle.
We could have people go to your page. You could give it away there. You could sell it, auction it off on Instagram, whatever you want to do. Or if you want us to run it, we could get people to sign up an email list. We'll send you their emails, and you can random draw one.
Let's come back to that because I'm kind of on the spot on that one right there.
Yeah.
We'll talk, but yeah, we'll put this point up and it'll be available in some form or format.
So go follow Wayback Wilderness on Instagram so you know what we decide to do with this arrowhead. So you get a chance at getting your hands on it when we get there.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And thank you for following me in advance. I appreciate that. I really do.
All right.
Cool,
Any other
guys.
last minute questions? Anything else you want to do, Justin? Good to go?
I'm pretty good to go. Again, I thank you very much, and y'all have a great day.